Let's talk herd. Hi, Mary.
Hello.
Thank you for coming
You're
back
welcome.
again.
Yes.
Yeah, so I felt like we had so much still to talk about after last time. And I wanted to just start with talking to the herd about it and seeing what came up for them. So earlier on, I was out there and I was just sitting, dialoguing with them. And what came through really strongly from them, I think, was this not question, but this reality really that we aren't our body. Like our body, we're inhabiting our body, but our kind of being isn't our body. And it was as if they were indicating that that is at the root of a lot of our issues with death and dying. And it felt like what they were saying was if we could just understand that in a more almost real way, if we could become that understanding, then we wouldn't feel so attached to the body and so kind of scared of death. What would you say about that? Does that resonate with you?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Well, here we go. Okay, I'm going to say the total opposite. We are our body.
Mm.
Our body is the densest expression of ourselves.
Mm.
So, yes. Okay, so when we die, and I'm not disagreeing with horses. So,
Yeah.
but so I'm not going to disagree with them because I understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
But the reality is I am on this earth in a body.
Yes.
Okay. So when we die, there is a separation of the spirit and the body.
Mm.
And then the spirit, okay, in that sense, leaves the body. And then after my horses die or even people die, I still have a connection with them. And they're no longer in a body. That's clear. So in a sense, I could say, okay, well, they're not their body at that point because they don't have one anymore. So I could say that. For me, the reason I get a little hiccup on that statement is that because then if we follow that, some trains of thought will follow, well, then the body doesn't matter. So if I have pain, just get rid of the body. I'm a spirit anyway, so what's the big deal? Just exit now.
Yes.
And then I bypass the entire natural dying process and I go, whoa, hold on a moment. Mm. Yes, we have a spirit. There's no doubt about that. Yes, we have a body. There's no doubt about that. And as long as we're on the earth, we're in a body and our spirits, the two are together. And there's a natural end to this existence in a body. And that's the part I think people are so afraid of, pain. So if I can just skip that part and just go to spirit form, I'm good.
Okay.
It's like, well, okay, but there's a process. There's a process of leaving the body. Mm. And it's that process that we really don't know all that goes on there internally on a spirit level. We have these nice stories, and I mean no disrespect to anybody because, I've euthanized a horse, so I shortchanged the dying process. I know, I reached my limit on that. But when it's possible to allow the natural expression through the dying process to happen, everything that we do not know on a spiritual level has been allowed to happen.
Yes.
But we don't know really until we do it ourselves. And at that point, now we're dead. And now, okay, we're in spirit form. Okay, fine. And then, yes, okay, we can perhaps try to tell people what happened so they don't have to be worried about it. And, but there's but for me, I just have such a fascination, and not in a bad way, but in a good way, of the fact that we're even in a body is a gift.
Yeah.
Like we even get to be here. We get to be in a body. We get to express ourselves through a body. We get to be embodied. Yeah. And then I want to have the full experience through the dying process as well, no matter what it is. Now, I still don't want pain. It's not on my list. I would prefer to have a peaceful death. I would like that. But no matter what it is, I want it. I want that experience. And I remember I talked to an animal communicator, and she had chatted with a little cat who was, I don't know, 18, 20, and hadn't died yet. Yeah. Was still going. I mean, it was down to skin and bones. I can't remember what it had with the cat. The cat was not in pain. There wasn't that any issue on, but clearly it was at the end of its life. But it wasn't done yet. Or actually, I correct myself. There was some pain issue going on. And so the animal communicator chatted with the cat, and the cat said, "No, I don't want pain meds. I do not want to dampen the experience.
Wow.
Yeah. I want the experience." Like the cat wanted the whole experience of being in a body, including this way. Now, we are all not that cat. We will all have different experiences. Some of us might want some pain meds. Some of us might want whatever. We might want comfort. We might want people around us. We might want no people around us. We might be just time to ourselves. So everybody's different. But what was fascinating to me was the cat said, "I don't want to dampen the experience." And I thought,
that's amazing.
Wow, talk about being embodied for everything.
Yeah.
So, that's sort of how that's where I go on that one.
Yeah. What that is bringing up, what that's highlighting for me, this apparent disparity in ideology, or is that actually we have a very different attitude to animals from ourselves. And I feel like the horses were almost talking to us for our deaths, maybe.
Oh.
And
okay.
Obviously, I'm interpreting. So, there's going to be a lot lost in translation. So I think when I'm feeling into what you're saying, and I really agree with you 100%, because our body is like the expression of us now, and it's really fundamental, it is us. But I think what they were pointing out or creating a space for more understanding around is this attachment that we have to the linearity, like like the fear, I think, that we have of the transition.
Yeah.
And I think that we may be in that fear in ourselves. We kind of, it's like we have it inside, but we still allow ourselves to die. I know there's programs, like in Sweden, you can go that exit thing and you can choose to die, which is, I think that's our choice, that should be our choice as well. But with animals, we just, it's like you say, we just avoid the whole issue. And I think you're absolutely right that thinking that they're just like, they're moving on and they're going over the rainbow bridge and we're helping them to do that, and all of that is like our way of coping with the whole thing. So I think maybe there's something about that they don't have an issue with the process, and that if they feel like we might understand more if we could see that it is a process, that it is a transition. Because if you think there's nothing after as well, then you wouldn't think that there's any need for a transition. It's like putting you out of your suffering. So like ending it sooner because there's nothing after. So I think in a way it's, I don't think there's a disagreement. I think it's just the perspective of that we really don't see animals' deaths as we see our own, or And yeah, I
Yeah.
wonder why that is. I wonder why we
Right.
think we have, or why we assume so much power like that over animals.
Yes.
So
Sorry.
yeah.
A thought just came to me. I was like, okay, well, here we go again. Here's another one. Okay. And I'll preface this with everyone has their own spirituality. And so and really doing hospice with horses because they're so big. If I didn't believe in God, I would not be doing this. Absolutely not. No way. Because it is too big and something bigger than me has to hold this.
Yeah.
So for me, I believe in God and I believe that God created me and that God is love and that God created all of creation, including the horses. And so for me, they came from God and they go back to God. That's what the horses do. So that's what the animal, that's the paradigm I use to be able to do this. So, and God is love. And of course, his creation is good. Like, of course. So, and what an honor that I get to participate in this. Like, I get to be the one who supports them in going back to God. Like, wow. So for me, that's why I don't fear death, is because I believe God made me. And that's where my whole goal, I have a goal, if I have a goal. It's not something I'm trying to do, but more of a way of being that, no, God loves me and God loves all of his creation. And that's where I go when I die. So that's how I'm able to handle looking at death, at pain, at big horses dying, big presences leaving huge holes when they die. Like, what do I do with all of that? That's how I handle it. I'm curious to know. I mean, I think other people have different paradigms on their spirituality and how they view death and what happens afterwards in ways that helps them be able to handle this, because this is, we are all going to die.
Yeah.
And then what do we do with that? And of course, there are, I don't know how many world religions, and they all deal with this question. So that's how I deal with it.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it?
When you were saying that, it made me think, why do we feel? Because I agree. I don't have any problem with the word God. And I also, use the word source or universe or love, unconditional love. But I was thinking, why do we think that we go away from God when we're alive, though? Like, why is that? I mean, I know we're in this separate body and a separate perception of.
Right.
But yeah, it's like, where does that come from? It's interesting. I suppose it's because we are individuated.
Yes, and if God is love, if I go with that definition, I can do things that are not loving. Like that, I have that capacity within me. And that's how we stray from God. And so then I go, okay, well, so I want to stay in a place where I let God love me. That I let God love me because I'm his creation. And he said I'm good. And so if I let that happen, then God's love in me will radiate out to everyone and everything around me. And then I'm in communion with God. And so when I die, what does God want? Communion with his creation. I mean, this is not hard. He made creation out of love. So then I want to be in communion with love. And when I'm not, because I'm a human being and I can make choices, and sometimes I'm having a bad day and it's not going well, I can stray from that. And then my goal, I don't like that word because it's so linear, but if I have one, it's, no, I want to come back to a place of love, letting God love me.
Yeah.
And then letting that love radiate out to everyone around me. So there's something bigger than me holding me that loves me. And then that's where the love comes from.
Definitely.
And it's perfect. I mean, I'm not perfect, but that's sort of the... What does God want? To draw us to himself. That's it.
Yeah.
In love.
I've made quite a big shift in my way of, and it's just more of a realization, because it feels better to think that, because I used to, my perception used to be that we spend this life just kind of trying to get back to God, trying to get back to that perfection.
Yeah.
That's our soul. And more recently, I feel that actually we are doing that, but in this life we're growing, like we're actually expanding, so that when we go back to or when we become soul again, when we disconnect from the body, that we're larger, and we've achieved something. So it's not like we're on this, what's the point of living thing. It's like living is really, it is expanding the whole universe. And I think and I think we make a very powerful choice to come here. When we choose on a soul level to go into this life experience, it's not taken lightly as such, by anyone. I think we've got so much support in spirit for what we're doing here. And I think not everybody chooses to do that. And I think the ones who do, it's a challenge, because it's so dense here energetically, and it does feel separate.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think when you realize that we are the ones who are expanding the universe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying exclusively, and I don't know, I don't know everything about it. I don't know, probably very much about it at all, but that feels really good to me. Like that it's really,
right,
our purposeful being here. And I think we can bring that sense of alignment, like you say, and that soul experience, we can bring that more and more into our experience here, but not by not being a body, not by not enjoying and appreciating our body, but almost through it, like you say, channeling that source through. And then maybe it becomes less dense here, and we go up some dimensions, and and things evolve a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. When you're talking about the density of being in a body in this human experience on Earth, what came to me was when I start thinking about pain and the density of pain. And I'm going, oh, that's clearly an embodied experience, or it can be. Let's put it that way. It can be an embodied experience.
That's true.
And I go, and I'm just sort of toying. I'm sort of thinking with that in my head.
Yeah.
And then who has the courage to feel that? To actually allow their body to feel it. And I can say from personal experience, on an emotional level of pain, so something that's emotionally painful, hands down, the most profound experiences of my life have occurred when I have allowed my body to feel the depth of the emotional pain, probably for several months ongoing. It took 9 months before it transformed. And then when it transformed, it went into the most amazing bliss state. I don't know how else to say it, but it came through 9 months of feeling emotional pain at the worst level. So I go, well, there's the density of the human experience. And will we allow ourselves to feel that? And if we do, a lot of times what's sitting in the very center of that is joy. The deepest sorrow at the center is joy. But then, of course, if you're in the deepest sorrow, you don't feel joy. And for me, it was 9 months of feeling sorrow on a very deep level. And then one day it transformed into the center of it was joy. And I go, what in the world is going on here? No one talks about this.
Yeah.
And so and then the emotions, the deeper we feel on the, I don't want to say negative emotions, because think they're good or bad. They just are. But on the ones that are more intense and, sadness, sorrow, all those ones that we're going to call are negative, but I don't think they're negative. The more deeply we allow ourselves to feel those, the deeper our capacity for the joy and the happiness and everything else. We don't get joy and happiness by practicing joy and happiness.
Yeah.
I mean, we can a little bit, but you really want to get joy and happiness, feel the pain.
Yeah.
And don't run from it. And then there's our density of expression, of embodiment that we get in this body, because it's the body that feels the pain. It's the heart that feels the pain. And it's like, and it's made for that. It can handle it if we allow it. And then in allowing that, the other end of the spectrum, the joy side, expands as well. And so there's our expansion.
Yeah.
And then what comes out of all that? Love. And now we're in communion with God again.
I mean, it's to do with receiving as well. Like, I do feel that a lot of us have got a lot of resistance. And I think the pain really is resistance. And it's like resistance to that source love. And so I think that's that thing that happens when it gets so powerful that something in us just like caves in, and we're like, okay, then I'll let it in, I will receive. Because you often people say that, like you just said, you have this terrible experience and it pushes you so far and you're just in such a difficult place that's when you finally let go and just allow yourself to receive that source. And I did used to, and I know a lot of spiritual leaders will say that you need to suffer, or you need to go, you need to have those really contrasting experiences. And most people that I know who are in, do know the state of bliss, they have. So is it necessary? Like, I do think there are some people who are just receivers naturally, and they don't block, but maybe that's because they suffered in the past, in past lives, and I don't know, because I do feel like the less that we resist, the less pain we have in our life, like the more joyful it becomes as a sort of, but I do totally agree that you can't, like, you don't get there by avoiding the
right.
What is it? I mean, how would you define it? Like avoiding your own issues maybe, or your own blocks. Yeah, your own conditioning, which has created those traumas and those pains. And that's really what addictions are, aren't they? They're because we're like running away all the time.
Yes.
From just feeling, from just sitting and being with. That's what the animals really teach us. It's so amazing, that just way that they can, just be with the depths of that.
Yes.
Maybe that's why we're scared of that in them, because it just highlights, it mirrors, like if we can't bear the thought of them suffering because
we can't suffer
just
ourselves.
Engage with our own.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
It is. I think there's a guilt thing as well, because we feel like if someone else is in pain, it's so easy to ignore that, or so like, I mean, you build up this kind of wish to avoid that, and it's a difficult one. But I feel like it's also connected with the human dependence on drugs and, synthetic medication, which is like quite a big issue. I mean, apparently it's something like 70% of Americans are on some form of antidepressant. I mean, and those
Wow.
drugs. They're not helping you to be more engaged. They're actually doing the opposite. So I think that's an issue as well, because we then bring that to the animals, and it just creates a kind of vicious circle. Yeah. So what do you feel would be is like the most powerful way of, because I think that's what the horses were trying to say, like, or trying to show, that is a way for people to accept that their animals can leave their body naturally. I mean, I don't know if they were adding up to that, but just be with the death process, as if they know that there is a difference between the body and the spirit, and that, you know, maybe in understanding that more, we can understand that it needs to leave in a certain way, or it needs to have the ability to detach itself. And because it does feel to me like a very real process, like birth. It's as real as birth, except maybe in birth the spirit, I don't know, when the spirit comes in, it's slightly different. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. that is interesting. Like, when is the spirit in the little baby inside? Like, from the very, I would go from the very beginning, but yeah, that's interesting. That I hadn't thought about that. Like,
because people
let's
have
contemplate that for a moment.
People have experiences where they have memories of being like an egg or whatever, you know, really, really young. So, but maybe there isn't an actual specific time when, I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have opinions about that, or knowledge about that, when the spirit comes in. And also with death, I feel like with death, it often leaves before the actual physical death. That's what I've kind of sensed. Do you think there is a time, or it's different for everyone?
That's a really interesting question. I'll have to observe more deaths to know.
Yeah.
So when everyone else is running from it, I go, wait. In fact, someone had euthanized a horse, and they buried it like hours before I got there. And I wanted to get there and be with the body just for a moment to just feel, because I was curious to know, because I know the chances of me euthanizing a horse are pretty low. So I wanted to know, what do I feel in the presence of the body of this horse? And it just happened. And I wanted to, on an energetic level, get a read on what's going on here, because it's the body, and it's dynamic. The whole process is dynamic. Even if you've euthanized a horse, it's still dynamic. But they buried it literally like 2 hours before I got there. But does the spirit leave? When does the spirit leave the body? When does that separation occur? Okay. I know of someone. Okay, now this isn't a euthanasia scenario. They euthanized the horse, and I know someone who actually physically saw the spirit leave the body. Like, it was this gray little smoke.
My sister.
I mean, that's not the right way to say it, but yeah. So I do know that can happen. And now that I think about it, sudden deaths in people. Okay, there was a plane crash, and okay, so if anyone's sensitive listening to this, just tune out for the next 30 seconds. There was a plane crash. It was up in flames, and there was a man who survived it, and there are other people who were strapped in their chairs, and they burned to death. And he said, I saw their spirits leaving their bodies. I saw them literally leaving their bodies as this was happening. So I know that can happen. And that's in a sudden death. And no one's euthanizing anyone there. It's just a really bad scenario, and death is happening right now. Okay, so I know that's true. Okay, then I look at, what if I'm in a dying process where it's over, I'm in a hospice situation. We're not treating the medical condition as terminal. We're letting this unfold. We're supporting through comfort care. When does the spirit leave there? So what can happen in hospice is that you'll have in later stages of the dying process, you can have moments where you feel like they're not all there mentally.
Yeah.
Like they're half in this world, half in the next. And so people go, oh, but they're not responding to their name. They're in pain. It's like, no. They're right in that edge, and they're half here and half not. So you can have that happening. And but every person and animal is different. And and then you have some spiritual traditions will say that the spirit doesn't fully leave for 3 days post-death. It takes 3 days for it to finish. So I hear that. And I can say when my horse died in hospice care, so he died a natural death peacefully. And then I sat with his body for 3 days. And I will say this, I don't know when his spirit left. I really don't know, because it was so seamless. Because his body was so peaceful. I just sat with his body. It felt like I was still sitting with him, even though he was dead. And then I sat with him for 3 days. Of course, at that point, we had mild temperatures. It was freezing at night, so the body kept pretty well. But around day 3, it's like, okay, we're getting a little bit of the stench. And I even said to him, I said, time for your body to go. The pickup's coming shortly, and here we go. But also, I think in the last recording, I talked about how, I may have talked about, there was a rhythm in his body post-death that my guess is it was electromagnetic field of the heart, and it had a rhythm that went up, down, up, down. And when I placed my hands on the corner of his chest, it synchronized with my heartbeat. And it drew me in. It drew me into where I'm like inches from each heartbeat drew me into his body. Now, I wouldn't say that, whatever that beat, I wouldn't say that was his spirit. But it was him. It was part of his dense body that he lived in. It was still connecting with his body. So I'm not sure exactly when. Okay, I have another one. There was someone who, there's a person, they were dying. They were in hospice care, and they were sort of in a coma or asleep, or not really, like they're drifting out and they're dying. And they had a little nanny cam in there because the wife would go to sleep in her room. And so if anything happened, she wanted to know. And so this is all recorded. And at the moment of death, there's a little pinhole of light that went up from, don't quote me, it was the stomach area or somewhere, I can't remember, but somewhere off the body. It was literally a pinhole of light that went up from the body, and it just went up, and then it was gone.
Yeah.
So, but that was at the moment of death with that person who had been not really responsive for I'm not sure how many days. And that's how that one went. And the pinhole of light thing I have seen before post-death, not with anyone dying, but people coming to visit me, that can happen. Like the veils between life and death, it's like they're peeled back. And so now we're seeing things we normally don't see, which are the pinholes of light, which I guess you would say that's the soul leaving the body. I guess you would say that. I don't know what to call that, other than I know I've seen it. And I know I have seen after the death of my horse, who did natural death and the hospice and all of that, and I was really connected to him. I had family members come in my dreams, and it would wake me up, and I saw those 2 pinholes of light in my room. And then the moment I saw it, then they were there for a moment, then they disappeared. And then I told them, you guys, I need to sleep at night. I'm in a body. Yeah. And it's like, I need to sleep at night, so please don't wake me up. So, and then they didn't do that anymore, but I asked them not to do that.